That's the meal ticket. Because you are a student, you can go to this event. Because you are a student, you are connected with this professor who is connected to this organization who, that's the meal ticket. It's the networking.
You ready to talk?
Yeah, I'm ready to talk.
What we gonna talk about today? What we gonna talk about today? Talk Talker, Talk
All
Talker.
right, all right. So, welcome to Sifting with Sha-Nel. So, this is a little different format. Today with us, we have the one and only Dawn Hawkins. So I want to welcome you all into the space. If this is your first time tuning in to Sifting with Sha-Nel, sit back, listen, enjoy the conversation. If you are returning, welcome back. We're excited to have you here on the show, just listening, okay? Partaking in what we call the mental sifting process. This is going to be a real chill conversation. This is as formal probably as I'm going to get. If you know, then you know. If you don't know, you about to find out. Okay. So welcome to Sifting with Sha-Nel, the top talker. I want to do an introduction from my good friend Dawn Hawkins because she is fantabulous. Okay. So Dawn Hawkins is from Indianapolis, Indiana, born and raised. She from that, like me. Okay. She is actually receiving a degree in communication studies. That is her major, but her minor is in psychology. And she is gaining this degree with a minor at Indiana University, Indianapolis, but previously known as Indiana University, Purdue University of Indianapolis, my alma mater as well. The work that Dawn does is within public service, both locally and the federal government. I asked Dawn, I said, now, Dawn, what would you say your proudest achievement is? And Dawn said, this is going to sound cliche, but being a good mother. And we prioritize being a good mother, and that she is. Okay. When I mean a good mother, I'm talking about reading over 100 books a year to her. Okay. I'm just, and everybody's definition of good is different. And I'm not saying if you don't read 100 books to your child, that don't mean you're not a good mama.
That's right.
I'm just saying she values literacy in a way that starts very young. Okay.
That's
okay.
Right.
And so one thing I asked Dawn, and this is the last thing which I really think is very interesting. I said, what is something that people wouldn't know about you if they by looking at you? Like, what would they not know? And that she is fluent in Spanish. She is fluent in Spanish, y'all. All right. So the topic today, mental sifting is always at the intersection of sifting with Sha-Nel. We talk about community and we have a particular topic. Now, this topic particularly that we're going to cover today is being a non-traditional student in higher education. Now, we may touch on some other things because I think that there is no such thing as separating life's experience. But Dawn, I am so excited and welcome. Welcome, girl.
Thank you. Very happy to be here and talk about all things college and what it's like, what it means to be a non-traditional student.
Okay, that's exciting. I'm so excited to have you. So I think we should start at your first, just like the first semester, which I know your first semester was at Dillard University in New Orleans.
That's right. And before I get into the first semester, let's talk a little bit about the college tour that we went on with your church. When we were juniors in high school. That was the first introduction to Dillard University. And I remember the moment that my foot touched the ground in New Orleans. There was just this magic feel that the city had. And I just thought, oh, what I got to do to get back here? What do I have to do to get back to this place? Because it was enchanting. I think that that's a great word to describe the city of New Orleans. It was enchanting. And so we went back. We had our senior years. I think it's important to know as we talk about college, one thing that stands out to me is during that time, junior year and senior year of high school, the conversation around college was that You got to go by any means. Even if that means you got to take out $60,000 worth of student loans, you got to go to college because this is your ticket. This is a guarantee to get you a job. That was the conversation back then in 2010 and 2011. And surely that conversation has changed. But those conversations and that experience from the college tour led me to my first semester of college at Dillard University in New Orleans, Louisiana.
Wow. What was it like choosing Dillard as like your first choice and then like actually getting into it and moving away from family?
Oh man, that was a lot. It was a lot. I think back then it wasn't nothing. But back then it was definitely a part of my personality to just be like, well, yeah, I'm going to New Orleans. Bye. I'll see y'all later. Indianapolis, you'll be here when I get back. See ya. Mama, you gonna be all right? Bye. All right, I'll see you. It wasn't nothing. It was I loved the city. I knew I had to get back. That was it. That was the end of the story. That was it. I think that when I got there, I do remember this moment. We had this ceremony, and it's the ceremony where they send off the parents. So we all went to chapel, all of the incoming freshmen and all the family that were there to bring them and drop them off at college. We went to chapel together that morning, but they had this ceremony. I believe we like walked through the front of the chapel and we exited, and then the families just went home. We didn't even get no goodbyes and no hugs and I love you. We walked through the chapel, we went on somewhere, and then the families left. And I remember being in the dining hall and experiencing this distinct, I can't call it abandonment because I was not abandoned, but and I chose this. The feeling is it wasn't abandoned, but I think there was this. I could feel in my heart the distance between me and my family and everything that I had known, right?
Yeah.
So I remember that shift. But a few days went by and I made friends and I got into my classes and I got used to things, and it was an experience. I can't say it was all good, but I can say it was an experience.
Okay. It's so interesting because Dawn and I both would be considered non-traditional students. And for those of you that maybe you're not familiar with the term non-traditional student, it really is just like a catch-all for if you're not fresh out of high school and staying the trajectory of 4 to 5 years, you are now outside of the purview of being a traditional student. So that means if you have to work a full-time job, if you have children, if you're outside of like the age range of 21, going to school, if you are in like a circumstance that requires you to have to like commute, you don't necessarily maybe live on campus. These are things that will like set you up to be a non-traditional student. And in some universities, even if you're like a transfer student, they consider you to be non-traditional in some ways. So is there any other ways that I maybe have missed being non-traditional, Dawn?
That's a good question. So I was talking about that earlier with Chris, and I gave the same definition that you gave. And as I was saying it out loud, I would add that maybe it doesn't just mean parents, but caregivers, right? Maybe you got a sibling that's taking care of younger siblings. Maybe you have people who have older parents and they're caring for older parents. I'm curious if military personnel,
Military. I was just going to say, I think military.
traditional students
Yep.
too. Yeah.
Yep, that's it. Okay, that's good. That's good. And then I'll put the definition either here or down here for you all. Okay, what are some things that maybe you wish you had known about college before entering? Maybe there is something that you think could have helped prepared you for it. Yeah, and or the third thing could be, what are some things in college that you felt like could actually transcend or like transfer beyond the classroom to the actual workforce? And I want to preface this by saying that if you're in college right now, I think that it is good to do your, I guess I'm kicking it off, my bad. I think that
Go
I think it
ahead.
is good to do your due diligence on understanding the things that you're actually going to be able to use outside of the classroom. Because
Absolutely.
college does this thing, it puts us in a bubble. It puts us in this bubble that makes us think that this is actual reality of how things work. And then when we get into the workforce, or when we, even if we decide to do entrepreneurship, there are some things specifically from textbooks you're just not going to be able to apply. And that's the
Right.
honest to God truth. So what principles can we extract from this
Exactly.
experience in college, and
Exactly.
then put those in places and apply those in areas in our lives that could really give us the result that we're looking for. So Dawn, what do you have? What are you thinking?
I'm thinking when you started the question off, the first thing that came to mind, um, something that I wish I would have known when I first started college was that the path is not straightforward. The path is not straightforward. Um, it is not that you're going to go to school for these 4 years, get this degree, and then get a job and live happily ever after. It
Oh,
just because you have this piece of paper, just because you have this bachelor's degree, that does not guarantee you a job. That's what I thought. Little 18-year-old me signing off on them student loans was like, well, the loan mean I'm gonna get the job after 4 years, right? Okay, right. But that wasn't it. That is not it at all. And
mm,
I think a lot of that maybe comes from the idea that perhaps back then when we were going in, I do think that maybe research was showing that college graduates earn more and there is greater opportunity and there are lots of networking opportunity. I think that it made sense at the time.
mm-hmm.
And I think that along a path that is not straight, it's true. But my understanding was that if I do A, then I'm gonna get B. And that just wasn't the case at all. And with that said, what I wish I would have known is that it is important to use this experience as a vehicle to get me where I want to end up. And so just like you talked about, thinking
Come on.
about what can you take from the college experience and apply to the workforce. So even in thinking about picking a major, I can't tell you how many times I've changed my major. I started out as a psychology major because I wanted to be either a therapist or a psychiatrist. So I started out as a psychology major, got bored and the classes were boring, general education classes, whatever. I want to take psychology classes. I don't like this. So then I changed to a Spanish major. Hence, now I'm fluent in Spanish. I changed to a Spanish major. But then I was told at the school that in order to get the Spanish major, I wanted to be a Spanish professor, and I was told I had to get a degree in Spanish education in order to do that. I knew I didn't want nothing to do with K through 12, so changed my major again to communication studies.
Yeah.
And I'm in the last semester, so communication studies has stuck. It's hit on a lot of the things that I have interest in, because
Mm-hmm.
if we can get back to what we're talking about in identifying what are the principles or what are the skills that we can take from the workplace, the communication studies degree, there's a lot of psychology involved in communication studies, right? Language, right? I like foreign language. That's why I was a Spanish major. There's a lot of language. We talk about language, nonverbal communication, verbal communication, computer mediated communication. We talk about language in communication studies. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think that I took this very winding path to get me to this place that had to do with all the things that I was interested in, right? But it wasn't that wasn't where I began. And I think that if I would have known to take the things that I was interested in, I can't say that I would have made a different decision because I appreciate all of the experiences from then until now that got me here. But I think that perhaps I could have maybe taken more classes that I would have enjoyed, or I would have gotten to do a bit more exploring based on my interests, instead of constantly feeling like I'm going along this path and interrupting it and changing courses. Maybe things wouldn't have felt so abrupt, and maybe
Mhm.
things could have felt like they had more of a flow if I went in knowing, okay, these are all of the skills that I want to accumulate. I'm taking this class because I want this skill. I'm taking this class because I want this skill. That's
So
what happened, but it was
so
random.
can I pause you there and ask you, would that be something that's on the list too, is taking that assessment of the skills that you have or the things that you're interested in, looking at those things and how that can like how you can get
Absolutely.
those skills or refine those skills or find out more
Absolutely.
information through the course, like knowing why you're taking this course to get the most out of it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think I would even say that that goes beyond being a college student. In anything that you talk about in life, anything that you do in life, have you heard the phrase like you need to know your why, right? If you know the reason why you are doing something, you show up to it in a completely different way. You show up energized, you show up ready to give it all you got. So knowing your why helps you stay committed and disciplined.
Wow. You well,
You started it. You started the conversation.
well,
I just
I
piggybacked off
mean,
what you said. That's all.
and I like to second that motion. Um, you said something really that I think is also on the list just by happenstance. It's okay to change that major.
Absolutely. Change the major. It is now. Hold on now. It's all right to change that major. Watch that satisfactory academic progress.
Hold on.
Watch
Oh,
that.
we have a
Watch
thing in
that.
theater. Yes, and
Yes, and
yes, change that major and watch that satisfaction because you ain't said nothing but the truth.
mhm,
You better
mhm,
watch it because, baby, the way they start saying you
mhm,
have already reached 150%
mhm,
past what you're supposed to be, or you're on the
mhm.
verge of being on academic probation,
Yep.
or you are right. And
That just happened to me. That just happened to me. I was under the impression that I was going to be graduating in May of 2025, and then I just so happened to something told me to check my university email because it's the summertime. I'm not in summer classes. I'm not checking. Some told me to check it. I checked it, and I found out that I have to file an appeal because I'm already at that threshold, because I started off at Dillard and I went to IB Tech and now I'm at IUI and I've had a few major changes. So I'm reaching that cap, right? So
mhm.
it happens. It happens. And I'm entering my final semester. So there was a lot of emotion behind it and a lot of panic, like, oh my goodness. It my the last semester, y'all gonna kick me out at the, or I'm gonna have to pay out of pocket the last semester. Okay.
Mm. Oh, that's
Okay.
good. Oh, okay. So, what is a benefit to being a non-traditional student?
What is a benefit to being a non-traditional student? I think that when you are a non-traditional student, being a non-traditional student means that you have other things going on in your life, whether you're in the military, you are a caregiver, you have other things going on in your life. And that means that college is not your entire like life. It's not your whole world. It's one piece of many things of your life. And I think that means that it is a means to an end, right?
Mhm.
It's a means to an end. And so you do it and you complete it because it's a step in a process. And I think that being a traditional student, it's for me, it was easy to get kind of lost and not see an end goal because I didn't have all these other things going on. It was just college. I was just a college student. And it's like, yeah, I'm here. Okay. But with all of these other things that I have in my life, right? I want to get my degree because I want my daughter to know that, okay, people in this family go get degrees. So, right, it's a means to an end. Or I'm getting a degree because I want to secure a higher paying job so that, we could take trips every now and then whenever we want. It's a means to an end. I don't think that I was able to view it that way, but I
Mm.
think being a non-traditional student helps to put it in perspective. I often remember sitting in classes and thinking to myself, I could be at a job getting money right now, but I have to sit here and listen to this professor drone on about I could have read this out the textbook. I could have written the paper at home. I don't have to be here. I could be at work, right? And you know what? After enough of that, I would get tired of that and I would withdraw from a class because because I didn't understand at the time that it was a means to an end. So I think just having that in mind, it is a means to an end. It is not the be all end all. The experience is not the be all end all. If your goal is to get to point C, you got to go through point A to get to
Yeah.
C.
Oh man. Well, for and it makes me think about community in a way, because being a non-traditional student does have an element to it that almost require me, I'll say specifically, to find like-minded people,
Mhm.
individuals that um I could have conversations with that weren't just thinking about going to class and that's all they had to think about was going to class.
Right.
um like you said, we're thinking about things outside of this degree. We're thinking
Right.
about how, and I'm not saying that traditional students aren't, I just think that it's put in a different light.
Right.
And so when you think about community and having to maybe cultivate that in your own life, whether it is related to college or not, what does community mean to you?
That's a good question. What does community mean to me? I think the first thing that comes to mind is I actually work with a woman who was a non-traditional student, and she had gone back to school with two little ones at home. And the more and more that I talked to her at work, the more we realized that we had a lot of shared experiences based on being parents and working and being college students. And so I think community means being seen and being validated in that experience. I think
Mm,
it's not often that I pause to reflect on just how just how much I'm giving. Like it's a lot. Like being a parent, working and going to school, like that's a lot. But I've been doing it for, the past 2 years. So I've gotten used to it. But I think when I get the opportunity to talk to somebody else and I hear them say that they've been doing the same thing, I'm like, "Dang, you ain't tired? You tired? You tired? How you ain't lose your mind? Did you had dishes piling up in your sink? You you got a mountain of clothes? You skip homework assignments? It's not just me.
you said,
It's not just
"Whew,
me.
okay."
Okay, I can breathe a little bit." And I
Mm,
think that being able to release a little bit of that tension, it helps to take off some of the pressure because that's what community does, right? It reminds you that you're not alone in what it is that you're doing. You're not alone in feelings of pressure or stress or uncertainty. It reminds you that you're not alone in it. And as you stumble and you make your way through, there are other people who may have gone before you or who can relate to what it is that you're going through. And there's something about that strengthens you, I think, and helps to keep you going.
mm,
It gives you this idea that, okay, if they did it, I can do it too.
yeah.
I think I can say this about you. Um, I definitely remember because you went back to school before I went back to school.
Hmm.
And then you graduated. I remember I still got the graduation pictures out front of your house. I still got those pictures in my phone. I remember that. And I just remember having this feeling of like, man, she made it. She did it. And the same thing that I just said, that I want to go back to school because I want my daughter to know that's what people in this family do. We go get degrees. That's the feeling that I felt when you finished, right?
Mm,
That's the feeling that I felt like we getting degrees out here. That's what we doing over here. We getting degrees. That's what community does.
wow.
In a way, and you never said, okay, Dawn, when you going back to school, I don't finish. You gonna go finish? We've never had that kind of conversation.
Mm,
And I don't think that I don't. Maybe we've had conversations of like, yeah, I guess I'm gonna go back, and maybe there's never been this pressure. I think it's kind of like an unspoken positive peer pressure, if you will, in that you did it and it showed me something and it just cultivated this inspiration in me. So that's
oh,
what community That's what community means to me. Inspiration and motivation, but also this sense of relief.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I never
You're
knew that.
welcome.
You never told me that. You never told me
See,
that. Okay, you keep some things in the bag. Okay.
you know I'm good for just pulling out a surprise every.
No, you will. And see, you're not gonna have me in here crying. Okay? You're not gonna have me
We
in here
made
crying.
it. We've made it. Ain't nobody cried yet.
You're right. We gonna
Okay.
okay. What do you think is one of the biggest misconceptions about going to college? And how does that affect understanding community and the purpose of it?
One of the biggest misconceptions about going to college. And what's the second part of the question?
And how does that affect the purpose of community?
Mm.
Is there a connection to you
I
between?
think that I think that there is. I think maybe kind of going back to what I've spoken about before, in that when I graduated from high school, the conversation was that you go to college by any means necessary, and your college education is your ticket into the life you need to have as an adult. And I think that with that said, people who may not have gone to college. So I'm thinking of family members who I'm thinking about my grandma. Okay.
Come
My
on.
grandma's 70 some years old. My grandma did not go to college. But I remember being 28, maybe 27, but this was before I had my daughter. I remember my grandmother saying to me, "It's about time for you to go ahead and get you a career." And I
Yeah.
remember thinking to myself, like, yeah, Granny, I would like to, but you know, it's not quite working out like that. All of the people around me who haven't gone to college, I think that they have that idea. And I think that when I'm engaged in conversation with these people who may very well be my community, right? My mother and my grandmother, these are the women who are watching my baby so I can go do homework at the library for 2 hours, 2.5 hours, right? So this is my sense of community. I think that misunderstanding sometimes creates a bit of frustration, a little bit of frustration.
Yeah.
Um, and then it kind of it's like an intensification of the frustration, because individually you're frustrated that I'm giving so much to this college education, and halfway through, I done found out it's not the ticket that I thought it was. It's not the ticket they told me it was going to be when I signed up for it. And then I have these people who are my support people. They're reminding me that you got the ticket. I can't convey to them that the ticket doesn't work in the way that we all thought that it did.
Mm-hmm.
But I think very slowly, I've been able to explain and share just how college and what it means has changed over time. And I think just going through that experience, the experience of college, and sharing with them, right? Because they're on the outside of the experience, but sharing what the experience is like with them, I think that it's helped them to get a better understanding of what exactly it means, how it's not such a straight path.
That's good. And I think specifically in our field as communications majors, I mean, because obviously if you go to school to be a nurse and you from start to
That's
finish, you want to be a
exactly
nurse, right? We call those, career specific. We call those training specific majors where,
exactly
that's a straightforward course. But if
right.
you're like liberal arts or something like that, or if you are any type of creative, it is not that straightforward, even though we
Right.
have an abundance of skills that can translate to many different areas in many different fields. It's not necessarily that. And I would like to add on to that is that meal ticket, y'all, if you're in school, the meal ticket is the people.
Absolutely. It's the people and
The,
it's the
it's
opportunities.
the opportunities.
Can I share? I got something to
Shit.
say. I got something to say about there's college is great in that you're going to take classes and you're going to be exposed to information that you may not be exposed to otherwise. You're going to cultivate all of your communication skills and your teamwork skills and your networking skills. But one of the positions that I'm in now, I got this position because I am a college student and because I was searching on a job board for college students specifically. Because I am a college student in the right major, I got this great opportunity. And so I think that is highly indicative of that's the meal ticket. That's the meal ticket. Because you are a student, you can go to this event. Because you are a student, you are connected with this professor who is connected to this organization who, that's the meal ticket. It's the networking and it's
Yes.
But that's a skill, right? Being able to that's a skill.
That's a skill.
You have to learn how to do that.
And that is not a skill necessarily. It's a skill that can be taught, and it is taught in school, but it isn't necessarily always refined in school. I know many people that have gone to college, spent the 4 or 5 years, went to college, and still have a hard time working a room. Still have a hard time understanding how to introduce themselves to individuals. They struggle with being able to put together their pitch to be able to say, hey, this is what I do. This is how long I've been doing it. This is my goal. I'm interested in the collaboration. That's the first thing. The second thing is they didn't ever talk to none of their professors. You didn't talk to your dean. You didn't talk to your chair. You didn't speak to anybody. So whilst you got all your A's and your B's, and that is an accomplishment, if somebody needs to ask, tell me about their work ethic. Tell me about how do they work on a team? How do they seem to be able to problem solve in very difficult situations? How are they going to be able to recommend you, write a letter of recommendation if they don't even know you?
Exactly.
Talk to your professors. Sit down in those office hours. Let me tell you something. As an undergraduate who went back to school, my first year, I'm going to date myself, my first year going to schools in 2011, I did 3 years, got kicked out. To tell you the honest to God truth, got kicked out of 2 universities, wasn't handling my business, took 4 years off, came back with like a different mindset. Like, let me be on my business. Like, let me really step up. And stepping up meant I needed to prove to myself that I could be the college student that I knew that I could be. But that also meant connecting with people around me and having those tough conversations with people that could hold me accountable. With that, I was meeting doctors and lawyers and curators and event planners and people that do all kind of things outside of that institution. You never know the people that they know. I'm like, yeah, I'm looking for a car. Oh, really? Oh, okay, well, Professor such and such is selling their vehicle for $1,500. I'm like, right? Something like that, as to being like, oh, I really would like to, I was thinking about getting a job over here, and I don't know if there's an internship. Oh, don't worry about that. I know someone who does. Send me an email. We can sit down and have lunch.
Yep.
Right. Something that's so simple. Now, being on the other side, I just recently graduated with my master's in May. Being on the other side and teaching college students, I understand why they think we're so scary as professors. I get it. I do. There's like that hierarchy.
I need my A. I need my A. Are you going to give me my
business, right? But when you start humanizing your professors, and I didn't say disrespect it because they're not peers, but when you start to humanize your professors and being like, I would like to sit down and talk to you about what was your college experience like? What are some things that maybe you wish that you had known, to even just break open the eyes of how you can be a better college student or a better person altogether. So much wisdom is within professors and within they can do. They want to help. They want to, for the most part.
They really do.
We just be overthinking it as students.
Yeah,
we do. I like to do a mental sifting, like take you through the mental sifting process. But actually, we've already gone through the process. So I would like to we've gone through the process naturally just in this conversation. And I want to just share that with the viewers, if that's okay. Okay. So for the mental sifting process, it's a 4-step process. The first process is identity. How do you identify? And positionality. Now, positionality means what is your proximity to power, or what do you believe your proximity within power in the larger scope of the world? The second is, how do you assess? So, how do we begin to assess our sifters? Our sifters are our minds, are our brains, or how we process things. How do we assess that based on what we want our goal to be? So, I want to remind you about what Dawn said. Dawn said this was a means to an end, which means that she was very clear that her actionable steps was to get to the end. Okay. The evaluation part, which is three, once we've gathered our information, we want to be able to make judgments based on that information that we've gathered. She told us that her sifter was made up of her experiences from her youth, from her community, which was her mother and her grandmother, and their ideas and ideology about college was that it was the meal ticket to get in. In order to get to her means to an end, she had to shift her perspective to understand how to get to her end goal, not based on necessarily what she had been taught, but based on what she had begun to experience and where she wanted to go. Okay. And so that brings us to the four steps, which is actionable steps. And your actionable steps are, what are the micro dosage steps that you take to get to your end goal? Dawn decided, okay, now that I realized that it's a means to an end, she had to learn how to balance work and being a mother and prioritizing assignments and being able to gain community, to be able to have that safe space, to be able to get to her means to an end. That is the complete sifting process just in this conversation alone, us just talking. And that applies to anything else you want to do in your life. Dawn, I am just so grateful to have you as my friend, but this is one of my oldest friends.
Oh man. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
No, me
We
and
know
me,
we
me
know
and Dawn go
about
way back.
way back.
No,
Way back.
I mean a hell of a writer, the one with forethought, an individual who not only just prioritizes her family and her friends in a way that is heartfelt, but she is a woman that has integrity and honor in what she does. I do like to do an ending, so it could be like a closing question or words of encouragement, and you get to choose. So you could end on like asking the audience to think or ponder on something, okay?
Mm.
Or you can have like words of wisdom or words of encouragement moving forward.
And I have to choose.
You don't
Okay.
have to. You can do both if you like, but it's up to you.
I want to do both. I want to do both because I think that I appreciate my college experience, and I think that maybe you would say the same. That everything from the start of your first semester at college to where you are now, it was all a part of a process that gave you experiences, that gave you knowledge and wisdom that you weren't going to get from a textbook. And sometimes being maybe the first person in your family or one of the first people in your family, in the group of the first people in your family to go to college, you're doing this for the first time. This is something new that you're bringing into your community. It's just something that you learn by doing. I think that I say that to say, my hope is that all of the people out there who are in college right now, whether traditional students or non-traditional students, finish. Finish, and while you're finishing, make the most of the experience. I think that as I talk about my experience and your experience, it's a process, it's a journey, and it is the experience that taught us. So let the experience teach you. So that's my encouragement. Finish and let the experience teach you. Make the most of it, learn from it. But the thing that I would give to ponder on is, how can you make the most of the experience? I would encourage you to maybe identify two things that you can do to maximize the experience, to seek out opportunities. What are some ways that, if you're a I don't know, if you're a comm major like us, if you're a comm major like us, what's one or two things that you could do that could take your experience beyond the classroom, beyond the college campus, that can benefit you in beyond graduation? One or two things, whether that's dropping by for office hours at the professor's office. Maybe it's I don't know, going to a conference and networking. Maybe it's joining a club. Maybe it's taking a class on, I don't know, public speaking, networking to help you better work the room so that you can be a strong networker. Just identify one or two things that you can do to make the most out of your college experience.
Thank you. And with
That's
that
it.
being said, this is the end. Thank you for tuning in with Sifting with Sha-Nel with our one and only Dawn Hawkins.
Thank you. Goodbye.